Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss this question, that is, analyze the perspective of isolation, assimilation, and integration in understanding the trajectories of Indian tribal development. So we have to analyze the perspective of isolation, assimilation, and integration. Now, again here, you have to divide your answer framework in three parts. That is intro, then comes your main body, and thereafter conclusion. Now, you can start your answer by just writing the definition of what exactly tribes are. Just write the definition of tribe, what exactly tribes are. Then comes your main body. Then comes your main body. Within the main body, you divide your main body in three parts. First, the isolation perspective, where you have to mention the work of Risley or the colonial policies. So how the colonial policies favored the isolation of tribal areas from the mainstream. And here you have to mention that during the 19th century, the British policy towards tribe can be seen in three aspects, seen as three aspects. First is administrative segregation. First policy related to administrative segregation, where you have to mention the policy that aimed at isolating tribals from mainstream by giving example of Government of India Act 1870, which provided protection, and Scheduled District Act of 1874, and which led to the creation of the scheduled tracts. Then you can also give example of 1919 Act, Government of India 1919 Act, which created the excluded and modified excluded area with a different administrative structure. Then you can also give example of Government of India 1935 Act, where there is a mention of excluded and partially excluded area. So this is how the administrative segregation had been done by the Britishers. And second, you can mention, and second policy, on second aspect, you can mention the protective forest policy of the colonial rulers, where you have to mention the Forest Act of 1865 that took away the traditional forest rights of the tribals. Then you can mention the Forest Act of 1878, which radically changed the nature of common property and made forest as a state property. And this Forest Act of 1878 classified forest as reserved, protected, and village forest. And this is also without giving any consideration to the right of the tribals. So this is how you have to mention in protective forest policy. Thereafter, you have to mention the colonial policy related to the reformist approach, the Christian missionaries, role of Christian missionaries, their opinion or their thought about the concept of white man burden. And here you have to mention an analytic perspective given by Buddha Dev in his book The Tribal Transformation in India, who claimed that with the expansion, or he argued, the Buddha Dev argued that the expansion of railways broke down their or tribals' historical isolation. And this initiated a process of unchecked and indiscriminated assimilation leading to de-tribalization. Then here you can also mention an assessment done by MSC Rao, who argued that the mining and construction activities during the colonial rule reduced tribal people to casual low-paid labor. So this is the first part of your answer or main body, which is the isolation perspective. Second perspective, you have to mention about the assimilation. This perspective came as a reaction to the colonial policies of isolation. And this perspective was generally introduced or propounded by anthropologist S.C. Roy, where you have to mention the uh, argument made by S.C. Roy, who gave the concept of Jana, Jati continuum. Then you have to mention the work of G.S. Ghure, who claimed tribal to be called as backward Hindu. And he also differentiated them as Hinduized tribe, partially Hinduized tribe, and hill section, where you can cite the example of Santhals, Bhil, and Kon. And again here, you can mention the concept given by M.N. Srinivas, his sensitization theory. And in this, you can also mention the work of LP Vidyarthi, who divides tribe into 4 types. That is, tribes living in forest, tribes fully assimilated in caste system, tribes partially accultured, and tribes minimally acculturated. So this is the 4 type given by LP Vidyarthi. So you have to write 2 or 3 thinkers from this in the assimilation perspective. Thereafter, you have to write the integration approach, which is the combination of isolation and assimilation perspective. And it was recommended by a Britisher named Warrior Elwin. In here, you have to mention that the post-independence government of India adopted a policy, what we call as punch seal. So you have to write all the 5 points related to punch seal, and where you have to mention examples in each point. Like first, a policy of punch seal, which claimed that when formulating the tribal development program, government of India have to formulate such a policy which respect the own genius of the tribal themselves. Here you can give the example of Nagas, who made shawls, Jharkhand tribe, who made rope making, basket making. To keep all these things in mind while making or forming a policy for tribals. Second policy within the Panchil is tribes take pride in their self-governance. Here you can give the example of Schedule 5 and Schedule 6 within the Constitution of India. Here you can give example of PESA Act 1996. Then just write the 5 principles of Panchil. Thereafter, you have to write the recent initiative taken by the government of India, where you can mention the Forest Right Act 2006, where you can mention Eklavya model of schooling, where you have to write the goal initiative, GOAL, goal initiative, etc., etc. So these are the trajectories of Indian tribal development. Then comes your conclusion part, where you have to conclude by writing how integration of tribal within the mainstream society is important, but or while respecting their cultural ethos. So integration is important, but you have to keep in your mind the importance of their cultural ethos or ethics or culture, religion. So this is how you can approach this question. Start with the definition of tribe. So in main body, just divide your main body in 3 parts. That is isolation, assimilation perspective, and integration perspective. Within the isolation perspective, you have to write the colonial policy adopted in 19th century. where you have to divide this policy in three parts, that is administrative segregation, protective forest policy, and third one is a role of Christian missionaries or reformist approach. Thereafter, in reaction to that, an Indian anthropologist and sociologist given the concept of assimilation perspective, where you have to mention the work of S.C. Roy, then G.S. Ghure, then L.P. Vidyarthi, M.N. Srinivas, etc., etc. Thereafter, you can write the integration perspective, which was adopted by Government of India since independence or post-independence. That is the policy of Panchsheel, where you have to mention the 5 principle of Panchsheel, substantiated by the examples, and thereafter certain recent government initiative in the form of Forest Right Act 2006, Eklavya model of schooling and goal initiative, etc., etc. And then conclude your answer why it is important to respect the tribal ethos while formulating the policy of integration of tribals in the mainstream. Thank you.